What's going on, everybody? Jimmy James 59, aka Jimmy James Goku, and we are coming at you with another AOE2 tier list. We've looked at the archery range more holistically. We've looked at heavy cavalry archers, one of the most upgraded units in the game. That was my previous video. And this time, I want to round out the archery range, and I want to look at the skirmisher. Now, you might be thinking that there's not a lot of variation in the skirmisher line to warrant its own video. But I think that there are a lot of misconceptions about the skirmisher line, whereas I think that Arbalist are a lot more straightforward, and we kind of cover that. We skew a little bit more that way in the 1v1 archers tier list. And hand cannoneers, there is not that much variation there, because a lot of things don't affect them. The fletching through bracer, those attack upgrades for archers, don't affect them, so you don't get quite the same variation. Skirmishers get really interesting. I think there's a lot of misconceptions, so I want to look at them, and I want to start off, right, by really establishing what we're doing here. See, ranged fighting, right? Archers fight at the margins. Now, what does that mean? Pierce damage is generally at a lower value, right? So let's take a feudal upgraded archer that does 5 damage, 4 base damage, and then 1 more with fletching, right? Now, if you have just 1 pierce armor, right, and you reduce that 5 to 4, that is a 20% reduction. That's pretty massive, right? Where, you know, when you think about, say, a paladin, right, later on, that's doing 18 damage, right? You add another melee armor, say like the Teuton's free melee armor that they get in Imperial Age, right, you know, for their units, right? They also get that in Castle Age, so let's just call it +2, right? Well, you're taking 18 down to 16. That's decent, but it's still not the same scale of effect as what we might see from adding an extra pierce armor, right? This is why, say, the Turks getting that extra 1 pierce armor on their scout line units is really a massive upgrade. Spirit of the Law has a very nice video about that. I highly encourage you to check it out, and just check it out. Subscribe to his channel. He puts out a lot of great content, right? So archers fight on the margins. Now, the second thing to remember here is that units in Age of Empires 2 must do at least 1 damage to an opponent with their attack. But however, and I think that this creates a misconception with skirmishers. You see, if a unit has a bonus damage to it, then the base damage can actually equal 0, right? And so the total damage will consist solely of that bonus damage. However, if a unit does not have any bonus damage, but its attack is still getting wiped out by the armor, let's say, then that total damage is going to be 1 damage. So if you take that example, right, of our feudal upgraded archer, let's say it belongs to the Franks, and we put it versus a post-imp fully upgraded elite skirmisher, that Frank feudal archer, the archer armor is going to be wiped out, right, because they have 8 pierce armor. We'll talk about that in a minute. But that Frank archer is still going to do 1 damage, right? Now, we're going to see something a little bit differently in some of our skirmisher fights. So, we will get to that, though. So, for this tier list, what are the characteristics are we going to be looking for? Well, there's really 3 main ones, and then a 4th kind of marginal limit case here, right? One is bracer, right? That's a very important upgrade. Whether you have the last armor upgrade, because that affects some of these very important calculations, right? Are there civilization bonuses that affect the viability, right, of the unit? And we think of viability on this channel as strength times affordability, right? So are you impacting any one of those areas? Finally, thumb ring. Thumb ring is kind of a marginal benefit. It doesn't affect the firing rate of skirmishers, which is, you know, pretty important. It does improve their accuracy against stationary targets, right? So that is something to think about. But look, basically, right, we're going to be asking these 3 questions. How well does the unit perform against gold cost range units, things like Arbalist, heavy cavalry archers, basically the things that skirmishers are meant to counter? How well does it perform against other skirmishers, right? It's not uncommon to have skirmisher versus skirmisher battles at basically any stage of the game, right? So that's very important. The third thing, how well does the unit perform in other non-traditional roles. This will typically be a result of, say, some kind of a bonus in particular that comes to a civilization. So those are the questions those are all the things that we're going to be looking at, the questions that we're trying to answer. So let's take a look at these bad boys. So this is our skirmisher. Howdy, Mr. Skirmisher. Got a great set of hair on him. And we can see, right, actually, and I'll just edit this on the fly, right, this attack, right, just go ahead and adding in the attack from, right, the range. Skirmishers with feudal upgrades do 2+1 attack. They have range 4+1, so we're including fletching. And then with the armor, right, they have 1 melee armor and 4 pierce armor, right? Rate of fire and speed, I don't really get into. The speed, there's one exception to this, and we'll talk about that in a bit. The bonus damage is the big one here. You do +3 bonus damage to archers, and then +3 to spearmen. Now, if we take a look at our fully upgraded elite skirmishers, so we're talking post-imp, right? We're doing 7 attack here, right? The accuracy is still 90%, but thumb ring cranks it up to 100 for civilizations that have thumb ring. The range, 5+3, right? The reason we have the +4 in the attack is because of chemistry, so it's 1 more. Melee armor, 3. Pierce armor is 8 if you have that last armor upgrade, right? It would be 6 without it, and we're going to get to that too. The bonus damage, we can see that the bonus damage against archers increases by 1. It's the same versus spearmen, but there's also a +2 damage that's being used against cavalry archers. So as you can see, the fully upgraded elite skirmisher not only has performance upgrades that are attached to it, but also has a little bit extra bonus damage, right? So that's something that is important to keep in mind. So, right, we're going to X out of these things here, and we're going to think about some different fights, right? So I want to look at the first comparison here, right? Is what if we have a fully upgraded elite skirmisher fighting an elite skirmisher missing the last armor upgrade, right? Well, let's think about the base damage that the fully upgraded elite skirmisher is going to do first, right? First, you have the pierce damage, right? That's going to be 7 - 6. That equals 1, right? Because we're missing the last armor upgrade here. You add the bonus damage, +4, you're doing 5 damage, right? If you take the base damage, right, against, right? So now we're looking on the other side of that elite skirmisher lacking the last armor upgrade, that ring archer armor. We take that pierce damage, right? 7 - 8 equals 0. Strange, right? But again, right, the armor's getting wiped out. It's not going to -1, right? It just goes down to 0. And then we add in the bonus damage, 4, right? So here's this, a case that we're talking about here, right, where the bonus damage is being wiped out, right? And so actually, we can actually go, right, into our game here, right? And I'm just going to take you into, right? I'm going to take you into our, into the scenario editor here. And let's just queue this bad boy up, run a little bit of test here. We have this, on our blue, we're going to have a Bulgarian, right? A Bulgarian skirmisher, right? Misses the last armor upgrade, but that's all. Versus a Japanese one in the red, right? And they do get all their upgrades. And let's take a look at the test just to make sure that we're right, that we've got this thing going on. So we can see our Bulgarian, right? Our Bulgarian skirmishers losing 5, 23 to 19. That's 4, all right? So we've got the calculations right, and we'll just let this thing play out. Okay, perfect, right? So we can jump out of that, and we'll jump back into our main tier list here. Let's go, go, go. All right, perfect. Now, right, so we saw that we have the calculations right, and so what that means, right, this 5 versus 4, what this means is that an elite fully upgraded skirmisher, right, versus an elite skirmisher that lacks, right, the last 2 armor, right, going from 4 to 5, the fully upgraded elite skirmisher is dealing, because going from 4 to 5, that's a jump of plus 25% more damage, right? That's a very big jump, right? 25, if you could take 25% more damage in a game of Age of Empires, you take it. Now, this is when we're looking at skirmishers in the Imperial Age, but what if we look at the Feudal Age, right? If 2 generic fully upgraded skirmishers fight each other, the pierce armor is going to cancel out the base damage, right? So each unit is only doing the bonus damage. Each unit's only doing 3 damage to each other, right? Now, let's think of another situation. Just to put this, what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to give you a sense of this idea that archers fight at the margins. That's what I want to do here. And I want to think about Arbalist, right? If we take an Arbalist versus a fully upgraded elite skirmisher, right? They're doing 2 damage because it's 10 minus 8. There's no bonus damage calculations involved. Now, an Arbalist, right, that has all of its attack upgrades versus an elite skirmisher that lacks the last armor upgrade, that Arbalist is going to do 4 damage, right? Arbalisters do 100% more damage, right, against an elite skirmisher that lacks that ring archer armor versus one that has it, right, and is fully upgraded, right, or at least fully upgraded in terms of armor, right? That's massive, right? That is very, very important. If you could, again, if you could upgrade your damage, right, go from 2 to 4, right, that double that jump, that 100% jump, in Age of Empires, you are going to take it, right? You know, which means that, hey, you know, our skirmishers here, right? You know, right? Our skirmishers are happy, and guess what? Ring archer armor, it matters, right? I think that there's a misconception out there that a lot of us can be guilty of at times, thinking that in a skirmisher versus skirmisher battle, right, that ring archer armor isn't important, and it's only important versus Arbalist. But that's actually not true. It also matters, as we saw in the scenario editor. It matters even in that instance of gameplay, right? So now that we've gone through all of that, I think that we're ready to go through the tier list, right? So let's just go ahead, get the show on the road. There's a lot of other skirmisher math that we can do in this video, but I don't want to create something that is too terribly overwhelming here. Because there's a lot of math and, getting a little bit of arithmetic wrong or something, because it matters so much, right? You can go into editor and test some of your things yourself, but I really wanted to show you, right, the skirmisher that was elite, fully upgraded, and then elite lacking the last armor upgrade, to show you that even in skirmisher versus skirmisher fights, that ring archer armor matters. All right, so let's start with the tier list, and we're going to start, right? Ooh, okay, perfect. All right, there we go. We got this bad boy centered. Right, let's start off beginning at the beginning with the Aztecs. Aztecs are going to wind up in the A tier, right? I know a lot of people, some people might think they're S tier, but remember our 3 questions, right? How well do you do against the gold archer units? How well do you against other skirmishers? And then how well do you perform in other roles, right? The big factor that Aztec skirmishers get is their Castle Age upgrade grants their skirmishers +1 attack and +1 range. Well, what does that mean, right? That means you get that extra attack, right, on your opponents, and the extra range means that you get the first shot off, right? So, if you think about the math there, right? Remember, against a fully upgraded skirmisher, the +1 attack, right? Because remember, the calculations were originally 7 minus 8 equals that strange 0. Well, it's going to be, 8 minus 8 still going to equal 0, right? But you are getting the range. So where this really helps you is against other skirmishers that lack the last armor upgrade and against Arbalist, right? So, it's helping you. It's not really helping you in one case with skirmishers, but it is helping you with skirmishers that are a little bit weaker, already giving you more of an advantage, right? And getting off the first shot is nice. Now, Aztec skirmishers have some weaknesses. Aztec skirmishers are lacking that second pierce armor. What does that mean? Well, as we saw with the comparison with Arbalist damage, Arbalist, heavy cav archers, those gold costing ranged units are going to be doing a lot more damage. And not only that, but Aztec skirmishers also miss thumb ring. Again, kind of a limit case. But when you're lacking that pierce armor, you really don't want to be missing out on anything else. So I think Atlatl takes them into the A tier because it's still a pretty powerful unit, but it's just not. It's just not. That doesn't. It has too many deficiencies versus those gold costing archer units that we gotta bump it down to A tier. But still, usually a very important part of the Aztec army. Okay, B tier, right, for the Berbers. Now this may surprise some people, and I'm gonna tell you why, right? Berbers get fully upgraded elite skirmishers, right? That right there in this video is going to be enough to get you into B tier. The real thing you got to think about with Berbers is the Genitor. Does the Genitor, which is a mounted skirmisher, does that get them into the A tier? I'm going to argue that it doesn't get them in the A tier, right? It's still a useful unit. Fair. But the Berber elite Genitor is basically double the cost, at least in food especially. Then it's double the food. I believe it's 50 food, 35 wood. I'm just going to go ahead and kind of check that here on the fly. I'm pretty sure I'm right about that, but let's just check it here. I'll look up in my notes, and we see that it is, might be 50 wood. Nope, it's 50 food, 35 wood, right? So it's double that food cost. Doubling the food cost is pretty massive. It makes them much harder to get to in early stages of the game where you're probably already, if you need skirmishers, you're probably already creating fully upgraded elite skirms. They're pretty expensive. They have a minimum range. The argument for them is they can keep up with a more mobile Berber army, but the thing is that they cost so much food that really, unless you're going camel archers, then you're spending a lot of food on your army, and that can actually cut into your hussar or your knight or your camel production, right? And if you're making camel archers, you're probably not also making genitors. So I would say this. If I had a B plus in this list, right, and we're doing the standard sort of S through D, right? No F tier skirmishers here. There's some pretty bad ones, but there's no skirmishers here that are absolutely... There's no skirmishers for any civilization that are, like, unusable in any situations. I'd put Berbers in a B plus tier if I could. So let's just consider them the top of the B tier, right? Maybe a little bit of a cut away than their peers. But you're not getting... what you're getting out of the Genitor comes at way too much of a cost for the Berbers to put it into the A tier. Okay, next up we have the Bohemians, and the Bohemians are going to go into the C tier. You don't get any thumb ring, and you don't get the last armor upgrade. That really hurts you versus those. Yeah, it really hurts you versus gold unit civs. It can hurt you against other skirmishers, so we're already in a weakened state. You do get bracer, and that's what keeps it. That's what keeps this unit really out of the D tier. All right, looking at Britons. Britons are going to wind up in the A tier. What gets them into the A tier are a few things, right? The first thing is that the Yemen technology in Castle Age gives the Briton elite skirmishers an extra range. So that means that they have a chance to get the first shot in, right? The second thing about Britons is that your archery ranges work 20% faster, so it's much easier to mass those skirmishers, right? Briton skirmishers get all of their upgrades with the exception of thumb ring, right? So it slightly reduces their accuracy against stationary targets, but you're still 90% accurate. The extra range is better because it's allowing you to maybe get that first shot in, and you have a 90% chance of hitting with it, basically. You know, something around there. So, you know what? That's actually pretty good. And yeah, and so the fact that you have that range, that on the whole gets your skirmishers in the A tier. It surmounts the fact that you don't have thumb ring. Okay, right? Let's see. Bulgarians, where are you? Bulgarians, we're also going to have to put into the C tier. You just don't... You miss the last armor upgrade, which is important. They're going to be a little bit better than the Bohemians, but again, thumb ring, is not moving the needle really in this discussion at all. All right, Burgundians, right? Also going to the C tier. They're the same as Bohemians, missing thumb ring and missing the last armor. So that's not going to do well for you. When we look at the Burmese, we're gonna find our first D tier civ. Burmese are not only missing the last armor upgrade, they're also missing the second to last armor upgrade. So you're lacking, you're really only getting +1 pierce armor out of these bad boys. That is terrible. That means that Arbalisters are gonna wreck you. Not only that, but you still miss thumb ring too. So, it's the last 2 armor upgrades, missing those, that really moves the needle. And boy, that's just not going to work. So D tier, you usually want to avoid Burmese skirmishers. I mean, really basically beyond feudal age. Once you get to castle age, you really want to be transitioning to another unit. Okay, Byzantines. Byzantines are going to be our first S tier. We went down to the D tier. Now let's hit the heights. Byzantine skirmishers are fully upgraded, and they're extremely cheap, -25% cost, both in food and in wood. This is going to help you mass skirmishers in all phases of the game. It is a pretty critical unit in their army composition. Often pairing it, say, if you're going with a really expensive unit like a cataphract, it serves an important role. So yeah, but the cost upgrade and the fact that you're not missing any upgrades, easy S tier. Okay, let's take a look at the C tier looking. Oh, nope, Celts. This starts with C, but Celts, unfortunately, going to wind up in the D tier. You miss Bracer, and you miss the last armor upgrade and thumb ring. That's pretty bad, so we got to knock them down. All right. Chinese, you know what? On my list, I have them B tier, but I gotta say, I think you gotta put Chinese in the A tier. I'm gonna make this move on the fly, and I'll tell you why. A little bit of rhyme in there for you. The cheaper technologies, right? Archers require so many upgrades, right? You're talking about getting ballistics, getting chemistry, right? Thumb ring, all these upgrades from the blacksmith. Having the cheaper technologies really helps. And oftentimes with trash units, you're trying to crank out a lot of units quickly because let's say you're getting countered, they're quite disposable, so you need to keep remaking them. Having the cheap upgrades, I think, really helps the Chinese in this situation more than, say, if it were a gold unit that were already really expensive, right? Skirmishers are not very expensive themselves, right? It's the technologies to get them are really where you're paying the expense. The fact that you save on so many of those technologies means that you're actually saving on a lot of the cost of skirmishers, right? It would be really interesting to look at the skirmisher upgrade savings compared to, say, what the Byzantines might save in a game, just looking at all the upgrades. So I think the Chinese have to be in A tier for that reason, because your skirmishers are fully upgraded and every technology, right, is going to be cheaper. So, and you get a nice early game eco bonus where you can kind of get ahead to afford those technologies. So that's pretty nice, and we're just going to go ahead and give that to them. Okay, now moving on here. Cumans are going to go into the C tier. You do get the last armor upgrade, but you miss Bracer, right? So, missing Bracer means you're going to be doing a little bit less damage. So, that's going to hurt you against taking out Arbalisters. It's going to hurt you a bit in some of your skirmisher fights as well. So, because you're only doing, that was 3+4, you're only doing that 6 damage. So, now if you're going up against other skirmishers that also miss the last armor upgrade, you don't have that same kind of advantage, right, that if you had Bracer. So it's definitely affecting the game and in both phases. So we got to bump them down to the C tier. Okay, B tier, right? Ethiopians, right? Ethiopians are going to wind up in the B tier. Fully upgraded elite skirmishers, not much more to say, right? That's going to be always going to be enough to get you into the B tier. Franks are going into the D tier. You don't get bracer, no thumb ring. You don't get the last armor upgrade. Pretty bad. If we take a look at the Goths now, I'm going to put the Goths in the B tier as well. You don't get thumb ring, and that's it pretty much. So you get the armor, you get your armor upgrades, you get bracer. You're really missing thumb ring. I'll take that as a civilization, because again, as we've mentioned in this video, missing thumb ring is not going to be something that moves the needle with all things being equal. And if you are missing thumb ring, but you have some other civilization bonus, we're not going to let thumb ring hold you back from that, right? We're not going to let thumb ring hold you back. And so Goths are fine. Their skirmishers are pretty usable. Put them in the B tier. Okay, Huns going in the C tier. You missed the last armor upgrade. That bumps you down. Incas are gonna wind up in the B tier as well. Now, Incas have a technology that removes the minimum range from their skirmisher. I don't think that this really matters all that much, because skirmishers fighting at close range, something has already gone very wrong. They're pretty squishy units, so if they're being attacked at close range, that means they're being exposed to melee fighting. They're going to die pretty quickly, so you're not... The thing about skirmishers is that they have all those pierce armor. They can just stand and fight against pierce armor units, right? So when they're fighting against, another archer or an arbalist, right, they absorb so much damage, right? They don't really absorb melee damage all that well, and if they're fighting up close, that's where they're at. So... again, it's kind of the same situation as Berbers. Yeah, they got a bonus because their skirmishers are fully upgraded otherwise, but it's not a bonus that's really going to put them into the next tier. All right. Indians, also in the B tier, fully upgraded, easy day. Italians are in the B tier, fully upgraded, easy day. Japanese, we get a little repetitive. Into the B tier, fully upgraded, easy day. Right, Khmer, also going to put in the B tier, right? You're missing thumb ring, so they're a little bit behind, but, still very, very usable. Don't be afraid to go elite skirmishers with Khmer. All right, next up we have Koreans. Korean skirmishers are going to go into the A tier. Now, Korean skirmishers are fully upgraded. They don't have any other performance bonuses. However, Koreans' civilization bonus, one of them at least, is that you get your archer armor for free at the next age, right? As soon as you get there. So, as soon as you have feudal age, boom, you have the first armor upgrade. As soon as you have castle age, boom, you have the next one, right? This gives Korean skirmishers really incredible power spikes at the beginning of each age that is really nice to have, actually. So let's say, you are in a battle, an archer versus archer battle, and you have some skirmishers mixed into your army, right? And they have some skirmishers mixed into theirs, and all of a sudden, boom, you hit castle age before any of the other upgrades come in. And let's say you both hit castle age at the same time, your skirmishers are going to have that extra armor, right, before your opponent can even think about getting it. And let's be real, your opponent's probably trying to get Bodkin Arrow, maybe the Elite Skirmisher upgrade, the kind of things that you're trying to get too. So you're going to have a pretty good advantage, right, earlier in the game. And so having that power spikes, right, earlier in whatever age you're fighting in. So that's pretty great. The only issue with it is that it kind of tapers off, right? Because once the other opponent researches it, you don't have that advantage anymore. Now, that's not the only thing with Koreans. Now, that would be enough to get them into A tier. The other thing about Korean skirmishers is you save minus 20% wood. And that's pretty massive. that helps them out a lot. And I'm looking at them and the Byzantines. They're saving about as much wood on their skirmishers as the Byzantines do, but the Byzantines are also saving on food. Man, that's so tough. Byzantines have a cheaper imperial age to get to an early skirmisher. You know what? We're in, we're in jazz mode, I Ching, we're playing it. I gotta put Korean skirmishers in the S tier. The cost saving on the wood is too good because wood is such an important resource, right? At early stages of the game, and that's when you might be making a lot of skirmishers. That's very, very helpful. It's probably more important more important resource than food. Yeah. Right, it's still not as much of a cost bonus, but then you're getting the power spikes as well. Koreans, right? Float them as the S tier. All right. Lithuanians. Lithuanian skirmishers are an easy S tier. They're fully upgraded. And then their Imperial Age technology gives them 2 additional Pierce armor, which is just massive. Now, is this going to help them in fights where it's fully upgraded elite skirmishers versus fully upgraded Lithuanian elite skirmishers? No, because the bonus damage is all the damage that's being done at that point, right? But think about it against Arbalist and heavy cavalry archers, right? Having that extra pierce armor, Arbalist are only going to be doing 1 damage instead of 2. Again, boom, that's a 50% reduction. Heavy cavalry archers, right? They do 11 damage. Minus 10, they're also doing just 1 damage. So in terms of fighting against those gold cost range units, having that extra 2 pierce armor on a Lithuanian elite skirmisher is just massive, right? But that's not the only performance improvement that Lithuanian elite skirmishers get, right? Excuse me, not just their elite skirmishers. All their skirmishers, elite or not, move 10% faster. This means that you can avoid fights a bit easier, but also you can force fights, right? So when you make those elite skirmishers and somebody's got a ball of archers and they think, oh, I got to get out of here. Against other skirmishers, they might be able to get away. Against Lithuanian skirmishers, much better at chasing them down, whittling down those numbers. Very, very powerful unit. I would say that this is the best trash unit in the Lithuanian army, but honestly, the winged hussar is pretty darn great, but we'll save that for another video. Right. Okay, next up we have the Magyars, and yes, I meant to pick Magyar. Shout out to T90 and his videos right there. And fully upgraded elite skirmishers, no problems, no questions asked. We'll say the same thing for the Malay, also fully upgraded. Now we take a look at the Malians. The Malians are going to wind up in the C tier. You're missing Bracer, and that's a major performance reduction. Okay, now we're looking at the Mayans. I'm going to put Mayans in the A tier, right? Again, might be a little controversial. Mayan skirmishers, right? They have a castle age upgrade. Again, this is similar to the Aztecs. You have a castle age upgrade that gives them an extra javelin. Now, this is a pretty good upgrade, right? It does a little bit of extra damage, but there's some issues with it, right? The issues with it are that they're pretty inaccurate, right? Again, Spirit of the Law has a video about this where he goes through some of this. They don't hit all that often, and so they do more to change fights, in, I think, more marginal ways when it comes to archer units, right? It's not bad, right? It's a bump, right? And so, but I actually think where this gives the Mayans the bigger bump is in the fact that they're actually quite effective against rams, because similar to units like the Chukanu or the Kipchak, right, having an extra projectile being thrown, right, is doing 0 melee damage, and rams have, you know, that -3. They have the -3 melee armor, right? So I believe that that's coming into play here. But regardless, it gives you a little bit more damage anyways, right? I'll have to look up the numbers on that to be completely certain. But regardless, you're still doing extra damage to rams, and rams are a pretty big threat against skirmishers, right? There's a game out there with when this technology came out of Hera playing this composition, and actually finding that they really do a nice job wrecking rams. So they do a good job against rams. They're increasing your damage potential even against champions as well. So that's going to move you into the A tier. You're not dramatically changing the Arbalist fights or the elite skirmisher fights. So I don't think that's enough to get them into S tier, but it is enough to get them a cut above the B tier. All right, if we look now at the Mongols, Mongols are C tier, missing the last armor upgrade. Persians, C tier, you are missing the bracer technology. Okay, Poles. Poles are a bit tricky. You might want to put a little asterisk on this one, to be fair. Let me tell you why Poles are going to be in the B tier. The Poles' status in B tier, right, is conditional because they are missing the last armor upgrade. Otherwise, they have all the upgrades. But it's conditional. If this unit is paired with the Obu, the Pole unique unit, which scrapes the armor off of opposing units, then that can increase the damage output on its skirmishers significantly. Think about it. If you have a field of Obu taking on paladins, scraping the armor off, right? Paladins have 7 pierce armor. If you scrape all the armor off a paladin, that's basically like giving your skirmishers +7 damage against paladins. That is pretty amazing, right? So it really changes the game. And that can give your skirmishers a lot more power. I would say it this way. Paired with Obu, I think Pole skirmishers are A tier, because you can get so much more damage out of them, right? So the Obu is kind of a civilization bonus for other Pole units, you know, such as their Arbalist or their elite skirmishers. With no Obu on the field, it's a C tier unit because you're not taking advantage of that. So I'm going to take the average, put them in the B tier. Okay, Portuguese, right? Fully upgraded elite skirmishers, no problem. Easy B tier civilization. We have Saracens. Saracens are fully upgraded as well. Easy B tier civilization. Sicilians. All right, here's another lengthy explanation coming down for us. I want to put Sicilian skirmishers in the A tier. Okay, why? Sicilian skirmishers fully upgraded, missing the last armor upgrade, except for that, right? But the Sicilian civilization bonus, decreasing the bonus damage it takes from all units, is massive at all levels of the game. Think about it. Feudal Age skirmishers are only doing bonus damage against each other, each doing 3 damage. For Sicilians, only 1.5 damage is being done to it, right? So that means Sicilian feudal skirmishers are doing double the damage against generic feudal skirmishers. That's 100%, right? A massive damage bonus, right? In Imperial Age, right? You're doing basically 5 damage when your opponent's fully upgraded elite skirmisher only is doing 3 damage, right? So because again, it's that 1 + 4, right? 5, but -2 because elite skirmishers do 4 bonus damage to archers. That's to take down the 2. That gives it a total of 3. So it's 5 to 3 in terms of damage. That's still a very, very good. I think that's 66% increase, I believe, right? So it's a very good increase, and you're getting this bonus to help you at all phases of the game. Sicilian skirmishers are very deadly to deal with, and so that's enough to get them in the A tier. Because they still can struggle a bit against Arbalists, right? Because again, Arbalists aren't doing bonus damage, so all this calculation doesn't matter. That's what's going to keep them out of the S tier. That's what's going to keep them firmly in the A tier, because Arbalist, again, they're doing 100% more damage than if they were going up against a fully upgraded elite skirmisher. So that's, it gets a bit tricky, but A tier, I would say borderline S tier, because that bonus can have such an important factor in the game. Okay. Slavs are going to go into the C tier. You like Bracer, you like Thumb Ring, but you do get the last armor upgrade, so that'll keep them out of the D tier. Spanish. Oh, those. I'm going to say Spanish are also a borderline case. The case for Spanish in A tier, because their skirmishers are fully upgraded, is their blacksmith techs don't cost gold. And I think that's enough to put them into A tier, to be honest with you. I think it is, because again, skirmishers aren't that expensive in and of themselves, so, any kind of cost reduction on your upgrades can help a lot, and you can save a decent bit of gold with those range upgrades. And I think it's true, if you're getting any of the blacksmith upgrades for range attack, you're probably getting them only for your skirmishers anyways, so that helps you out a lot. And probably the same thing with archer upgrades. I mean, you do need them for conquistadors, but still, it's letting you tech into skirmishers late game and transitioning from conquistadors to, say, maybe something like cavalier or paladin skirmisher as a unit composition. And, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Tatars, B tier, fully upgraded. Teutons, D tier, no bracer, no last armor upgrade. Turks are also going to be in the D tier because they miss the elite skirmisher upgrade as a whole, right? You only get regular skirmishers. That means you're missing attack bonuses against cavalry. You're not getting as much of an attack bonus against archers, which, as we've seen, again, archers fight at the margins. That's very important. And you're still just going to be outclassed by any other units, elite skirmishers, in the final analysis. So, yeah, if you're making them in feudal age, I wouldn't invest too much, and then I would try and get out of them as soon as possible. Vietnamese are going to go into the S tier, and they may have the best skirmishers in the game. You have access to the Imperial Skirmisher, which is doing extra damage base and also a little bit of extra bonus damage against archers, which is very, very helpful. And also the Vietnamese Imperial Skirmisher has plus 20% HP as well, so they're even more tanky. They're just better all around, and that means they're going to do better against Arbalist, they're going to do better against other skirmishers, and honestly, having the extra damage means they're also going to do a little bit better probably against, more traditional units you might find. They're still not going to be a great counter to things like champions. They're still going to get wrecked, but they're still, it gives them a little bit, they're doing better at answering all three of those questions for us. So if you can do that, that'll get into the S tier. Finally, Vikings. Vikings are going to go into the B tier. They only lack Thumb Ring now. And again, as we've said, that's not really moving the needle. So that's our tier list. A surprising amount of explanation for skirmishers, right? But as we've seen, skirmishers, hey, not a lot of people talk about them. They're happy to be discussed, and ring archer armor, right? As well, it matters. I think we've talked about that in this video. So, It matters definitely more versus Arbalist than it does versus other skirmishers, but even in those fights, it does increase the damage output a bit more. So when you're debating whether to get it, you know, you'll want to think about that, in your calculations. So that is going to do it for this video. I hope you really enjoyed it. If you like videos like this, please, I'd appreciate if you liked it. Feel free to subscribe to my channel. Feel free to check out my Twitch channel. I'll put a link down that into the link below if you want to check me out. I stream and play usually Age of Empires, occasionally another game or two, and sometimes I even use Twitch to just as an accountability tool to study. So if you're into something like that, I'm really into the scholar warrior mindset and lifestyle, and that's one of the reasons why I like Age of Empires, because it's a great way to contemplate and think about both of those things in the simulacrum of real-time strategy. So with that being said, I will check you guys out later, and I hope to see you out there in the game and on the ladder. Peace.